Constitutional government, who is willing not only to explain the problems, but is also willing to vote and fight against government abuse. Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul is one of those few good folks in Washington who are actually standing up against big government. He's the author of a new book, The Tea Party Comes to Washington. And he, like the American people, like the governors in Wisconsin, Indiana, and New Jersey, has had enough with big government. I spoke with Senator Paul a short time ago and asked this Tea Party legend, Senator, what's wrong with government today?
Well, I think there's a lot wrong, and I think the main thing wrong is that the deficit and the debt is so large that they're all talking about it now, and that's the good news. The bad news is they have not yet begun to fathom how big the problem is and what it would take. You know, we proposed $500 billion in cuts. That's a third of 1 year's problem,
right.
And it was dead on arrival because they said, oh, that's too much, we could never do it. The president's budget will add $13 trillion to the debt over 10 years.
Right.
The Republican alternative will add probably $11 trillion. Neither side has woken up to the enormity of the problem.
Well, when Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, and Mike Mullen, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, were each asked separately, independently of each other, what is the worst national security crisis we face today, we heard a phrase from them similar to what we just heard from you, which you might not expect from a military guy and the Secretary of State. Simple answer, the debt.
Right.
Do you agree that that is the most intractable problem facing the Congress today, the debt?
Absolutely. And even those who have always been great defenders, like of the entitlement programs, need to realize that they are threatened. They are threatened at their very foundation by the debt becoming so enormous that no checks go out. You remember what happened in Greece? They all of a sudden changed the age dramatically overnight, the age of eligibility, because there's no money. That's the danger in our country. If we don't wake up and start getting into gradual reform of the entitlements, then we may wake up one day and not have any checks to write.
What should we do with Social Security? Now, I believe Social Security is unconstitutional. I believe the Constitution doesn't authorize the government to take money from A and give it to B. But that's probably a non-starter, that argument, only because so many generations of folks have paid into it and expect, quite rightfully, that their money would come back. But what can we do to manage this problem for future generations?
Well, I think what you have to do, first of all, is just admit we're all living longer and admit that the baby boomers are all getting ready to retire, and it's going to be difficult to somehow find the payment for these folks. So what you do is you have to gradually raise the age of eligibility. We promised in the campaign we'd do it on those 55 and under. You can still do it gradually. Social Security could be reformed by gradually raising the age, even over a several decade period, but you got to get started. You can't wait until maybe 5 years from now we're having trouble paying our bills to start talking about reforming it.
One of your great predecessors in the Senate, who's a hero of mine, the late Senator Barry Goldwater, proposed in 1964 that Social Security become voluntary, that each individual, when they begin working, can make a choice for themselves. And that was a non-starter then. Is that going to go anywhere today? That's real freedom.
Probably not, but it's interesting. You know, I was at CPAC a week ago, the Conservative Political Action Committee, and I gave a speech, and I said in my speech that...
That's how your father got all those votes.
I said in my speech that a young man had written me a letter, and he said, thanks for proposing the budget cuts, thanks for tackling Social Security, and P.S., do you think I could opt out of Social Security? And I used that in my speech, and the young people bring down the house. They would love to opt out. The only thing I don't know how to do is, if I tell the young people you no longer have to pay Social Security taxes and you can save on your own, it would be great, but the system becomes more top-heavy, and what do you do with all those who are getting ready to receive?
Because this system is a Ponzi scheme that counts on hardworking people putting their money in so everybody can get their money out. Last question. Does the government, as you see it, does the Senate and the Congress recognize constitutional limitations on their own? Or do they think that they can write any law, regulate any behavior, tax any event, subject only to what they can get away with?
The latter. I think for 70 years we have evolved or devolved away from being a constitutional republic to being almost a pure democracy. But there is some hope. The last vestige of hope really for us probably isn't in Congress. It'll be in the Supreme Court hearing the Obamacare case. The two decisions, and you know them well, Judge Hudson and Judge Vinson, finally said for a change that inactivity is not commerce. And that, to me, if that is upheld by the Supreme Court, will be the most important decision in a lifetime.
Another debate about big government and where the line should be